on? Welcome to the Dad Edge Podcast. I'm Larry Hagner, your host and founder of this show. And hey, got a question for you. Is there somebody in your life, or maybe there's more than one, that you find it hard to forgive that person because they have wronged you in some way, shape, or form? Maybe it's a sibling, maybe it's an old friend, maybe it's a parent. Who knows? But I think what we can all agree is holding a grudge is something that's really common. But what we don't really understand is how much bandwidth emotionally and mentally that takes up, and how heavy that feels to hold a grudge. My guest today is Derek Stone, who actually wrote a book called Why Should I Forgive? His story, whoa. His parents were divorced when he was 5 years old, and as a troubled teen, he blamed his father for all the bad things that happened to him as a child. He was sexually abused and sometimes had no idea where his next meal was coming from. He lived behind a facade. No one really knew his true self, and he would spend time praying for a better life, praying to one day grow up and be a father that his dad couldn't be to him. And this is where this vision of forgiving really came to Derek. So in this particular show, Derek and I went so far down the rabbit hole of having this conversation around forgiveness, and I know that you guys are going to really enjoy it. We went completely off what direction we were going to go in, but I think that there was probably some divine intervention here that allowed us to go in the direction that we did and bring you guys way more value than we even had anticipated. What he's going to go through, though, is the process and the benefits of forgiving. He's also going to talk about how we can stop playing the victim role and start taking responsibility for our future happiness. Also, he is going to talk about what it means to have patience while stuck in the waiting room. And not to worry, he's going to go through that. Most importantly, the direction that I didn't really think we'd go in is this question that I've always had, and I think probably a lot of you guys have this question, which is, how do I draw the line between forgiving someone but also not allowing them to have free access to me, my emotions, physically, mentally, emotionally? So in other words, getting the toxic people out of your life, is that forgiving, or is that being smart, or is that being unforgiving? What is that? And in this particular show, I share a very personal story, as well as he does as well, and really cleared the air on that. So you guys are in for a treat today. Gentlemen, we do have a new resource for you. If you go to gooddadproject.com/books, you will see every single book from any guest we've ever had on the show. This came out of the demand of our listeners and giving you guys a very easy resource to go pick out a book from one of our guests that you want. Also, if the Dad Edge Alliance Mastermind community has been something on your heart, Chris has been doing life with us for 3 years. If this is something that's been on your heart, we have over 420 men now that do life with us on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. This is our virtual mastermind. This is where we give you the tools to create a legendary marriage, to create epic connection with your kids, no matter what age they are. Master your personal finances, optimize your health, and become a leader in your community and or business. And we give you the community to go out and keep you accountable and to make it happen. All right, gentlemen, no more talk from me. Here is the epic interview with my good friend, Derek Stone, who wrote the book, Why Should I Forgive? Hey, what's up, Derek? Welcome to the Dad Edge Podcast, my friend.
Hey, Larry. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's good to have you. As we heard in the intro, forgiveness. This is a topic, and out of I think out of 500 plus shows now, oh gosh, almost 600 now, I don't think we've ever talked about this topic.
Seriously? Oh, yeah. That's awesome.
Will you forgive me for that?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. All right, we're off to a good start. Sweet. All right. Hey, so let's start here, man. I'd like to start out with your childhood, because I think that's pretty much where this book begins. Mm-hmm. What was it like growing up for you?
I grew up, my parents got divorced when I was 5, and then we kind of bounced around between my aunt's and my grandparents' house, and then my dad's every other weekend. And then my mama finally settled us down in some Section 8 project housing off of Dolphin Island Parkway in Mobile, Alabama. DIP, what? So
I think that's the first time I've ever heard a Southern guy with like gang related language. I don't know.
I know, right? You know what I call that? I call that country hood. So
Right.
I was raised in the country and in the hood. So it was country hood. That's what we call it.
Straight out of Nashville.
That's right. That's right. You put them together and then you get Nashville. That's right.
I love it, man. We're only a minute and a half into this. I'm already having fun.
For sure. So that's what basically, grew up in Section 8 project housing, and there was always fighting going on in the neighborhood. Just you always had to just deal with stuff. You couldn't let people run you over. You had to, there's some fights I got into, quite a few actually, and just trying to not let people run you over, and as far as that, I was sexually abused by my stepdad, my first stepdad, from 8 to 12.
Yeah. So 8 to 12, that's when he was in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, man. So when did it start? What age were you?
Well, I think it was around 8.5, somewhere around there. It's just crazy as far as I can remember.
Gosh, because that's right in that age where you can comprehend what's going on.
Yeah, sometimes when I look at my youngest son who's 7, and I did the same thing when I looked at my older son when he was 8, and I was sitting there thinking, gosh, I was 8 years old. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, it's like, what the heck? Like, what was this guy thinking? I imagine. So is he completely out of the picture? I assume?
Absolutely.
Like, okay, absolutely. Been gone since you've been like 12?
For the most part. He was around maybe my first year in college, and
wow.
Not even around, like he was messaging back and forth on Facebook and stuff, and that kind of thing. But yeah, he, that's about it.
And is this the book? Is this the man that the book is about? I apologize, I haven't read your book yet, but
no. The book is about how I was so angry inside, not just at him, but like how I felt like it was my dad's place to protect us, and he had no idea none of this was going on. So all the bitterness I had growing up was after I was 12 and 13 and 14, I was acting out, and 15, 16, and how that really affected me was that I just lived behind a facade. Like, everything is cool. I was the guy looking for a place, a party, looking for a place to happen. And everything was good on the outside, but inside I was just getting eaten alive, And so, I mentioned in the book, this place, going to find a quiet place where you can just kind of clear your head and let down your walls and really figure out what it is that you're trying to do with your life. And so there was a place for me. I talk about it in chapter 1 of my book. There's a place for me. I call it my place. I actually wrote a song about that I put the lyrics in the song in the book as well. But it was just a place on Bayfront Road where it was at the corner by this little restaurant, and it was just a little hole in the wall in the trees you could go through, and it's just a beach, just a sandy little beach, and there's driftwood everywhere, and you could sit there and watch the oil tankers go by and sailboats and seagulls and the waves crashing and sun going down, and I'd go out there and just pray for a better life and a better way and a better, so yeah.
Whew.
That was childhood for me.
So you mentioned now, and not to jump too far ahead, but I want to get a good gauge of how this has impacted you here later, in your life now. Mm-hmm. And that is, you've got 2 boys, 14 and 7. And if I could just share authentically with you, I didn't have what you had growing up, but my mom was married 3 times. My biological father, who she was married to for a handful of years, they got divorced when I was 9 months old. He was gone. Got reunited with him when I was 12 briefly, and then he was gone again. And then at the age of 30, I ran into him as a fluke in a Starbucks here in St. Louis. And so the thing that I understand where you're at, I have a 12-year-old. Mm-hmm. And the thing that kind of messes with my head, and again, I'm definitely not comparing the two, because yours just sounds like my heart just bleeds for you going through that. That's just, it sounds absolutely horrendous. But I share this story with you because I understand. I have a son now I've got 4 boys. I've got 14, 12, 6, and 4. And I look at them, especially my 12-year-old, and I imagine like leaving him again. And I'm like, that would never even enter my mind. And there are some days I'm like, what the heck, man? I mean, I know people have their reasons and all that good stuff, but I share that with you only to say that I understand that, and that messes with your head. You know, it's like this was done to me as a kid. Like for you, this was done to me as a kid. Like what was my stepfather thinking at 8.5 years old? And here I have this 7-year-old. Like, how in the world does that enter even someone's head?
Right.
So, how have you evolved? Like, how have you gotten past this?
Well, that was I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a general contractor here in Nashville, Tennessee, and we have a business that we employ about 20 subcontractors and one employee. And basically, when my business did over $1 million in revenue, I wanted to go back. People say, "Don't go back." Well, I wanted to go back to see what it was that triggered my success, my journey to success in it, and it all roads pointed back to this one decision that I made to forgive my dad. And it was an event. So what happened was when I was 16, my mom moved us from Mobile, Alabama to Baldwin, Mississippi, which is right outside of Tupelo, where Elvis was born. And just to kind of put that geographically for people. And so when we moved there, I had this same. I was running when we moved. So basically, I was running. And I got involved sexually with a girl that was 3 years older than I was. I was getting on every drug and drinking every bit of alcohol I could find. And this is minded, I am 15 years old at the time, 15 years old. And my mom decides to move us, and I am just furious at my mom. Like, I know all these people, all my friends for 10 years. You're ruining my life, you know. And I got to Baldwin, and I did the same thing all summer. Just I didn't have a girlfriend or anything, but just drinking and cussing like a sailor. And this voice came to me 3 weeks before school started and said, because I had it in my head, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to do the same stuff and just, find any girl I could take advantage of. I mean, it was awful, but that was just my mindset. I was just a bitter dude. And that's the reason I was making those decisions, because I was a bitter dude. But this voice came to me just audibly and said, "Hey, this is a new start for you. You're not going to screw it up." And I've only heard that voice audibly 3 times. One was this time in particular. One was when I met my wife, and the third time was in the conference that I'm fixing to tell you about. So when that voice came to me and said, "Hey, this is a new start for you. You're not going to screw this up." See, faith was all that I had to hang on to get me through that. Just kind of clinging on to God kind of thing. And so, when you look at somebody, and the reason people ask, why didn't you ever tell anybody or anything like that? And I want to just address that for a second. So 1, I'm 8 years old. 2, the abuser says, if you tell anybody, they're going to take you away from your mom. And I love my mom. It's your mom. You're 8 years old. So your brain's trying to comprehend what to do about that, and then every time that I would feel like I had the strength to tell somebody, I would be I don't know how it happened in my brain. I would be transferred into this courtroom, and I'd be on the witness stand. And not only would I have to relive every one of those moments, for some reason, I could hear what the people in the crowd were thinking. And it was accusations. And, you might have brought this upon yourself or just awful stuff. And that's the reason that I never, ever told anyone. And then the first time that I did tell somebody as a youth pastor, and I talk about this in the book, that he used my situation to take advantage of me as well. And then that's why I was running. I was running from God. I said, man, if God's got people like this in the church, I don't want nothing to do with them. Nothing. And I ran. And that's why I said I got involved with a girl, and then that kind of thing. This is super this interview is like super vulnerable already. So it's really cool, man. If you're cool with it.
Dude, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah,
seriously.
no problem.
I know we started laughing and kind of cutting up and all that, which I like to add a lot of humor to the show. But I want to take a moment and just acknowledge and appreciate you for being so transparent. And
thank you.
Seriously, I know we smile and we laugh and that kind of thing, but at the same time, man, this is hitting me, and it's hitting the audience too. So I definitely appreciate it. And yeah, by all means, as far as you feel comfortable,
sure,
whatever you want to share, we would love to hear.
Cool. So that's basically it. And so the 3 weeks before the school started, going into the 11th grade in Baldwin, this voice came to me and said, "Hey, this is a new start for you. You're not going to screw it up." And so I actually unpacked a Bible, a box. I unpacked a box that was in my closet that had a Bible in it, and kind of cleaned my act up, stopped drinking, stopped cussing in about 3 days. And everybody in the house was like taking notice, like just everybody's calling me, the goody two shoes, whatever, And so, and then the first day of school, I met this dude named Will Davis. He comes out of the middle of nowhere. He goes, "Dude, do you love Jesus, man?" I was like, "Yeah, man, this guy's crazy." And like everybody just like swarmed me. We're like, "Yeah, it's like a football rally or something." It was weird. So anyway, so Will took me to a football game that night, and the following night to a church, and then the night after that same night was church that morning, and then a small group that night. And I just realized the voice came to me. I met this dude. I met this church service. I'm at this youth group service, and I realized this is exactly where I needed to be. So I opened up my arms and I said, "God, mold me into the guy and the man you want me to be." And so that's later that year, Mark Keys, who is in the book, one of my mentors and father figures, he put on this Stomping Out the Darkness conference with about 7 youth groups around the Tupelo area. And Dave Park, who wrote the book Bondage Breaker with Neil T. Anderson, they came and Dave Park spoke. And he spoke in this one spot, there was bitterness versus forgiveness. And in that, while he's talking, he says, "Some of you need to forgive a parent or a sibling or a grandparent or an aunt or uncle." And my heart started to pound, and my fist clenched up, and I started to walk out. I literally almost walked out because I didn't want to hear it. That voice came back to me and says, "Derek, I want to use you, but I can't because you have this bitterness towards your dad." And then I turned around and asked the title of the book, "Why should I forgive him? Why?" I said, "Because he wasn't around. I was walking through the hallway with a candle because electricity got cut off taking cold showers. We never knew where the next meal was coming from. And, I was abused because he wasn't around to protect me. And I was bitter because I felt like it was his place." And that voice came back to me as if I didn't just holler at it. It said, "But I'm the father to the fatherless." And see, I wanted to know what that was like so bad, for somebody to tell me that you have what it takes, that you're enough. That I said, "You know what? If you'll give me that, I'll forgive him." And so, man, about 2 hours later, just broken, crying, forgiving the abuser, my mom, my dad. My mom, she's just doing the best she could. Working 3 jobs. She was never home. Anytime I spent with her, I was in the kitchen with her. That's why I know how to cook really well. but yeah, it's like just forgiving all these people. If a name would come to my heart, man, I'd forgive them. And when I got up, I no longer felt the need to live behind this facade. And the burden I'd been carrying around forever, as long as I can remember, was gone. I just didn't. It wasn't there anymore. Man, I felt just free for the first time, almost like alive. It was crazy. And then what happened was God answered that prayer. 2 things happened. Was I prayed that God would restore the relationship with my dad, and then the other thing that happened was that all of a sudden God kind of inserted me into 5 men's lives. Man, I got to see how spouses solve conflict together. I got to see how they discipline their kids. I got to see how they loved their spouse and how they loved their kids, and how they are a contributing member to society, how they ran their businesses, the integrity that they had, how they were contributing members to society. I got to see all that firsthand. Like, man, do normal kids get to see this stuff? Like, I'm seeing this stuff. I mean, I don't even know if their kids see it. Or maybe they're not paying attention to it. But I was, because I didn't have these examples. These were all new, completely different examples. And so Andy Andrews, one of my favorite guys' book, Traveler's Gift, transformed my life, changed my life. And in that book, he says, if you hang out with chickens, you learn to scratch at the ground. But if you hang out with eagles, you'll soar to great heights. And so that's kind of what happened. It's like I started hanging out with eagles, and not to call my family chickens or anything, but they just, people repeat what they're shown, and so that's just kind of where all that kind of came to a head with my life and the whole forgiveness thing. And so, cool story that 6 years later, I'm in the middle of the deer woods. It's full blown gun season. Deer are everywhere, but in my scope, you know what I'm saying? and I get this phone. I'm on my way out of the woods because I have to be somewhere, and I'm on a 4-wheeler, and I feel my phone vibrating. So I turn the 4-wheeler off, get the phone out, and it says my dad. I was like, gosh, man, Dad doesn't ever call unless it's my birthday or somebody on his side of the family was in the hospital or dying. So I kind of was preparing myself for some bad news. And he picked up when I answered the phone, I said, hey, and he said, hey, Dad, hey, Derek, how you doing? And I was like, well, he was excited. So I was like, well, this is a different kind of phone call. And he goes, hey, you got a second to talk? And I said, yeah. And he said, I don't want to be known for somebody who walked out on their kids. And I want to be in your life and in my grandkids' life. And I just want to apologize. And I want to ask you if you'll forgive me for the way that I've treated you guys for the past 10 years. And I just put a big old smile on my face and said, Dad, I forgave you a long time ago, but I've been praying for this day for a long time. And, we drove out there that Thanksgiving, and he got to hold my little baby before Ashton. He's my oldest, before he was walking. And, he's been there. He drove down when Noah was born. And, we'd been back and forth to Texas, quite a few times. And he's been here, went to a couple waterfalls. We went on a couple hunting trips together. Just a real cool way to bring it back. And then one thing that I really desired from my dad, because my dad has been, is a godly guy. And he was hurt. He was just hurt. And nobody ever told him the why behind any decisions they made as a parent. So, that's one of those situations when you see parents doing what they do to their kids, sometimes it's because that's what was done to them. And we kind of hint that a little bit earlier, but it's like Jesus said, forgive them for they know not what they do. And forgiveness for me is like, when true forgiveness to happen, it's something has to die. And so I feel like when God looks at me, he sees Jesus on the cross. And then when sometimes we don't realize that we have to take, sometimes our parents are the best thing of what not to be, a best example of what not to be. And then you have to take and sometimes you have to mourn what could have been. So if you don't like how somebody's treated you in the past, you're mourning what could have been. You're mourning the loss of your innocence. My life could have been like this if this wouldn't have happened. You have to mourn that and say, man, but I'm still alive. I'm still breathing. God's still got a plan, and you got to push through that. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of in the book. We go through some steps that I've kind of learned along my journey. Because what was real cool was after my dad called me about 2 years later, I had been just reading a whole lot of, I hope you don't mind that I'm talking about the Bible and stuff. So
hang on, dude.
Okay, cool. I figured you would have stopped me, but yeah, we're good. So,
no, you're good. You and I were, you're in ISI with Aaron Walker, and Aaron's a good friend of mine. And you and I were talking about, Brian McCrae.
Yeah.
And, Brian McCrae is, he's one of the facilitators in that group as well as participant. Brian's taking me through Operation Timothy right now. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before.
Not yet. No, I haven't.
It's like 18-month Bible study mentorship, like in depth, pretty in depth, lots of homework, lots of reflection. So, but yeah, no, you're good.
Okay.
Keep going. Keep going.
So what was really neat is I've been doing a lot of studying on the Father's blessing. Okay. So, like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, when you read about those three guys, man, it's like the Father's blessing was passed on, and all of a sudden their lives just blew up with this cool, like this just really neat. So, I started praying. I was like, man, I'm going to ask my dad, because like my older brothers had no idea I don't even know if they would have asked him for it. Like, and so I'm a twin, so about 14 minutes. And then I have an older brother that's 5 years older than me. But so I called my dad and I said, "Hey Dad, do you mind doing this? This blessing." And he was like, let me pray about what to say. He goes, "I don't think it'd be a problem. Just let me pray about what to say." And so he calls him back like a month later and he goes, "Hey, do you got a minute?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "I think I figured out what I want to say." And he read off, and I list it in my book in Deuteronomy 18, I believe. And it's just this blessing. You'll be blessed in the fields and the valleys with your offspring, and you'll have all these all these cattle and all this stuff, just abundance, right? Just speaking abundance over me. And man, I felt like at that moment, I felt like I was like knighted or something, dude. It was like ridiculous. And that's when the true change for me really started happening, was like, okay, cool. There's got to be a better way to do this. And then I took that Andy Andrews information and I just digested it. I went through each one of those, which is, if you haven't read The Traveler's Gift by Andy Andrews, by all means, the book changed my life. It got me where I am today. It's 7 decisions to personal success. And so just digesting those books, having a decided heart, seeking wisdom when you don't know what's going on, being a person of action, persistent without giving up, without exemption, just not giving up. And that's how it's got me to where I am. And I say all that because when I look back, that moment when he did his blessing wouldn't have happened if 2 years before that, or 6, 7 years before that, I wouldn't have forgiven him. And then his phone call to ask for the forgiveness. And he trusted our relationship enough to give me the blessing. And then everything else is history, And so, am I done forgiven? Absolutely not. I mean, it's a muscle. And so much of forgiveness, people don't understand that so much of it is a choice. Bible says in Deuteronomy, I think it's 30:19, he says, "I bring all heaven and earth together that as a witness against you, hoping that you choose life." You have a choice, it's blessing or curses. And, that you would choose life, that it may go well with you and your descendants. And so, and then they forget, Jesus, the disciples asked Jesus, how do we pray? And he said, "Thou Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, the kingdom come, will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us." So many people don't hit that "as we" part. That "as we" part is like, dude, you mean to tell me that you're forgiven how you forgive other people? That's about how it reads, And so, so yeah, that's really where I like to take, people is like, oh, well, because I honestly, man, if you're not forgiving people, you're just opening yourself up to being tormented. You're putting yourself in your own prison. And so, that's kind of what, where it's at. Man, I've hijacked your podcast, man, and your listeners. I hope you guys don't mind.
We don't mind. Are you kidding? So no, you're good. I want to get to, so first of all, a couple of quick reflections here. I just want to acknowledge and appreciate you you had already forgiven your dad before he even called. And, hearing those words from your son, I'm putting myself in your dad's shoes. I'm like, oh my gosh, like that could have gone in a really horrible way. Mm-hmm. And my son had a smile on his face. He probably felt your smile through the phone, and you forgave him and held your oldest son. And before he was able to walk, and Thanksgivings and hunting. And I mean, what an amazing ending, right? Or beginning, I should say, really.
For sure.
Especially, and I also want to commend you for, that's a lot of traumatic things to go through as a kid, not mm-hmm. once, but twice. Mm-hmm. And especially something happens, like you kind of look at it like, well, God, like this happened under your roof, right? Mm-hmm. Which really upsets me.
Right.
So the fact that you forgave your own father, you're a highly spiritual individual. I mean, I don't think people would actually, human nature, I don't think would blame you for being like, yeah, it's justified that you should be mad at God. Or people probably wouldn't blame you. Yeah, you should be mad at your dad. Like, come on, like, of course. But yet that's not the case with you. I have a question for you. I don't know if you've ever been asked this, but you have me genuinely curious. Is what's the difference between, how do I phrase this? Forgiveness and stupidity. So, what if you were raised by someone who, oh, actually, this could be a parent, this could be a friend, this could be a girlfriend or a wife. Okay. So, let's just say you are in a marriage. Okay. Let's just use that example. And this woman just constantly just verbally beats the snot out of you, right? Just over and over and over again, and comes out, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that. That was so disrespectful. Like, no problem. I forgive you. No problem. I forgive you, over and over and over. And you truly, genuinely forgive them, although you allow that person back in your life and give them full access to you emotionally and mentally, physically, the whole 9 yards, right? So at one point, do you say, you know what? I forgive you, but you go in your direction, I go in mine, but I forgive you. I've often been, and I don't even know if you know the answer to this, I'm probably putting you on the spot, but I've often wondered, like, okay, does God give us any direction on, like, okay, yeah, forgive, but don't be stupid? Or no, keep forgiving over and over. Like the parable that Jesus says, hey, turn the cheek. Yeah. 7 times over, turn the cheek, all that. So what's your take on that?
So that's a very interesting. Actually, this is the second time that's kind of came up, and I would say if it's abusive relationship, that's one thing. I honestly know that I have fought for my marriage. I believe that because sometimes it can be like that, and so you have to get into a situation where it's healthy, right? So, and this is the best I can explain. I haven't really talked to this as far as spouses go, and it's like as it goes in. The big thing I would say is that your spouse, I would think that I would take you guys into a counseling situation where nobody's got skin in the game. That's a very important. I want to emphasize that. Going to your pastor, they know you. They got skin in the game. Don't go to your pastor. Go to somebody that's nothing against pastors. I love you, but I'm just telling you. I'm saying you could be one or the other. And I would think that going to somebody that neither one of you know, and they have no benefit of going on a side. That's, man, to me, because I saw the most benefit of that coming from a guy and who went through marriage counseling, because my marriage was headed straight for divorce, bro. Like, we went for him. Our counselor said we went through 9 out of the 10 things that cause divorce. The only thing we hadn't been through was infidelity. And so we went from being, dirt broke to having money. And not that had anything to do with it, but like, I was working my tail off, man, like 80 hours a week. And I'd say, hey, bye, I love you, give you a kiss. And then all of a sudden, after she got diagnosed with cancer, I don't know, it's not on the explainer, but she got diagnosed with cancer, which is super rare. It was only 3 cases in the country, 3. In her tonsil. It was an 8-hour surgery, 33 radiation treatments. She's 4 years cancer free as of April 7th. And praise the Lord. And but like, after all that, we were just starting all these petty arguments because we had systematized our business so much that we didn't know what normal was, being around at the house all the time. Man, I was home at 5 every day. I didn't know what that was like. I'm gone all the time. And so having to get back into her world. So when we went to counseling, the counselor did us together and did what they call family of origin. And so the family of origin takes you back how you were raised, how you were disciplined, how you were talked to. And then what happens is that the other spouse, the aha factor goes through the roof. Oh, that's why they do that. Their parents were demeaning or mean or talked down to her or they saw her mom do that to her brother, or her mom do that to her dad, even worse. Right. So, and no wonder the dad just kind of walked away and just left, and so the aha factor goes up of seeing how your spouse was raised and the decisions they had to make, the fight, the things that they struggled with growing up, versus where she saw where I went through, and she was like, oh my gosh, had no idea some of the stuff that came out in the counseling sessions. And then the counselor said, she was, dude, you've done a lot of work. I can tell you've done a lot of work. She's talking to me, and I have, done a lot of work. And she says it's very, very noticeable. She goes, most people that go through what you go through are like serial killers, axe murderers, or pedophiles, blatantly. And so she's like, you've done a lot of work. This is, and she kind of saw where things are going. So after that, you have to remember your spouse is not your enemy; they're a gift. But I would think at some point your spouse has got to see the writing on the wall. This is what you're doing. There's Gottman. I forget his first name. I think he's a Dr. Gottman or a PhD. He did
John Gottman.
Yeah, John Gottman. Yeah, you got it. He did a book, and in that book, man, the principles of marriage, I believe, it says, the 4 horsemen: criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. Dude, those are the 4 horsemen. Like, the apocalypse for your marriage is happening if those 4 things are going on. Emotionally mature relationships start where the person will try to joke to get out of a situation because they're trying to do a recovery. They're trying to recover the situation. And so I would definitely say, if you're in that situation, go get some counseling. That's somebody that doesn't have any skin in the game. Don't go to your aunt, your uncle, Uncle Paul, whoever, even your pastor, like I said, because the pastor knows you. They have to see you. I would go do some real deal counseling. Some churches even gift counseling to you. They'll write the check for you. I mean, if you can't afford it, I mean, sometimes that's a deal for people, but because you have to set up some boundaries, at some point you have to set up some boundaries for yourself because you want to get to a better place emotionally. And if in the second chapter, I talk about going with your gut, and going with your gut is the first chapter is talking about finding a purpose for your life. So when you're trying to find a purpose for your life and wanting a better life, you have to set some goals. Okay, I want to be this person. I want to be this, and this is the vision for my life. Well, then the chapter 2 is talking about how to use that as a filter. So is this going to benefit my goal or not? Then it just, the writing's on the wall for the decision, right? I want to benefit my goal, not to hurt my goal. So, and sometimes that's getting negative people out of your life. And sometimes that's building boundaries with other people. Sometimes that's totally dissolving a relationship. Just, hey, you're just a person that's just not good for my life. I'm sorry, and listen to your gut, because your gut will tell you. But yeah, I would definitely say though, to kind of answer that question just fully, is I would definitely say go see some counseling and see why that person is doing that, because it may be they saw it mimicked, right? And it's not stupidity. They saw it as acceptable because they grew up in it as being acceptable.
I appreciate that. It's a lot of clarity. I've often, I'm not going to go into detail, but I've struggled with. Well, I will.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, just very comfortable person to talk to.
Thanks for trusting me.
Yeah. So my mom and I, we've had this really sort of tumultuous relationship since I was like 18. Mm-hmm. I moved out when I was 18. Mm-hmm. And look, here's the thing. I'm 45 years old, and I know I don't look a day over 44. I appreciate you thinking that.
Man, you look good, dude.
But I grew up, and I honestly think, now that I'm a parent, I've been a parent for 14 years, 4 boys. Parents do the best job they have with they do the best job they can with what they have.
Absolutely.
And I look back on the way my mom raised me, and I used to be so bitter and pissed because my mom drank a lot. Mm-hmm. Mom drank a lot. And what you said, and I hope you don't mind, I'm not trying to hijack the interview, but go ahead. You're hitting me so hard right now. So my mom, I moved out at 18. I was, and I didn't go back. And it just basically boiled down to, like, the older I got, the more I saw my mom inebriated than I saw her sober. So it was always, I always remember, and you never know who you got with my mom. It could be my warm, loving, over the top, so much affection you don't know what to do with, or, you yelling and calling you every name in the book, you know? And that was the unpredictability and the abuse that came with alcohol was always really hard. The other thing I'll share with you too is that my mom, I think, had all good intentions. You know, I have no doubt that my mom loved me. Like, my gosh, like sometimes there was just an outpouring of love. Like, it was on a scale of 1 to 10, it was like a 15 sometimes. Like, wow, like there's so much affection. There's so many compliments. I don't know what to do with it. And then the very next night, it would be -4. And you're like, what is going on here? So you never knew what was truth and what was not. You never knew the person you were going to get. And like I said, the longer it just kept going on, and I saw her, it was every day, every night, you know. The other thing too is what you said about your dad and the way he grew up, or the way parents grew up. Like, I think my mom grew up in a tough childhood, you know. I mean, my grandmother was very critical. You know, she didn't pull any punches. Like, hey, don't eat that bag of chips. You're only going to get fatter. You know, things like that I know really hit my mom and her siblings. My grandmother, though, very sweet person as well. You know, just kind of was like, tell it like it is. I don't know the details of that childhood for her, but what I can tell you is that, you know, this all kind of, there was an event that happened when my 12-year-old was 2. My mom hit him, and at that point, my mom and I had always gone through phases where I was like, okay, we're not speaking, and that would go on for like a year or two. And then that happened, and that was the line in the sand for me. And I was like, I can no longer come around here with these kids. They're not safe. And unless you're willing to get help, I can't be here. And these kids will not be here. And we made that decision. And then we haven't really spoken since. That was 10 years ago. We've spoken kind of here and there. And like, sometimes I'll get like these really wonderful text messages out of nowhere. And then sometimes I'll just get like a lashing over text message. I haven't had a lashing in years, so it's been a while, but that was kind of the flow. It's like, okay, well, I'm not sure if she's drinking when she sent this or what's going, I don't know. So anyway, I feel your pain because, you know, I went through years of that, and the whole thing, like with my own father, you know, I have a relationship with my own father now. And again, I think my dad made decisions that he made with the information that he had at the time that he thought was probably the best. And so my dad and I have made a decision. We're like, hey, past is the past, and that's the way we're going to leave it, and we're moving forward. My mom, on the other hand, that's why I asked you that question, where I'm like, okay, I forgive my mom, but there's still like just that element. It's like gargling with acid in your mouth, that like, it just burns, like the guilt. Like, am I making the right decision by keeping my mom out of our family's life because she's drinking, you know, she's not sober? Or would God sit down with me and be like, look, I really appreciate you, you know, it's the right thing to do to forgive her, right? Because I do. And it's also the right thing to do to not have her a part of your life because it's not safe. And for me, that's the battle. Like, if I were to die tomorrow and God would be like, you forgave her, but you didn't forgive her. Okay. You cut her out of your life. And one of the commandments is to honor your parents, and you didn't do that. So I struggle, man. I'm not going to lie. I struggle. And I think a lot of people, so if I'm going to relate this back to the audience, maybe it's your parent, maybe it's not. Somebody in your life somewhere along the line has wronged you over and over and over again. And if you forgive them, does that mean, do we have to keep them in our life? Do we keep them at arm's length? Do we not speak to them? Do we just keep letting them back in and having them, you know, crap all over us? Yeah. So I would
say, for one, I commend you on setting the boundary. Nobody's going to probably tell you that, but I will, because you're protecting your family and you're doing what's best for your family. The second thing is that, how do you think she feels? You know, do you think that she's, so there's always, I always try to put myself in people's shoes to see what they went through, to see why they do what it is that they do. And, you know, she probably drinks because she has so much hurt. And she might not like some of those decisions that she's made. And so the only thing she knows to cope is with that.
I got to admit, man, and this is where I battle with it, because you're a dad now. I am.
Mm-hmm.
If I always tell my wife, I was like, if I did something, even if it was my fault, and my kids cut me out of my life and I couldn't see them, their wives, or my grandkids, I don't know if I could deal with that. Like it would, I'm years from that, and it's, my hands are sweating. It chokes me up just to think about it. Like I would be done for, I think, as a human. And I think that
Absolutely.
I would probably do the same. I'd be like, well, what do I got to live for? I think I'm just going to medicate myself and deal with this as long as I can.
Well, if you put that in the perspective of my situation, it's like me allowing my abuser to come babysit my kids. Absolutely not going to happen ever. Not going to happen. You see what I'm saying? It's because you've got, so forgiveness is for you and your well-being. Trust is for them. Okay. So trust is for them. You can forgive them all day long and feel at peace about that. And the fact that trust is for you. Look, somebody sold $12,000 from me in business. I can forgive them. Yeah. And I'm going to forgive them, but am I going to trust them with a dime? Never again. No, not going to happen. So it's the same situation as that, look, you've got a proof and you've done this behavior over and over again that I'm sorry, but I can't trust you around my kids, until you get help. And if there's no evidence on her end that she's getting help, then bro, you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I didn't mean to hijack your message. Just like what you're saying, it's what you're saying is hitting me hard, man. And it's what I've battled with for 25 years, 27 years, I guess now. But I mean, ever since 2010, when we really kind of split, that's been 10 years ago. So I've battled with that hardcore, like, man, Christmases and holidays. And I'm like, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? Yeah. And sometimes it even messes with me so much that I'm like, what am I teaching my boys here? That this is okay? Hey, dad cut his mom out of his life. So if my dad pisses me off enough, then maybe I can cut him out. Like, you know what I mean?
It's a rough place to be, for sure. For sure. I mean, us as dads, man, gosh, we pray every day. I don't know if you're a believing father, pray every day we're not going to screw something up, and man, our job as fathers is to be a provider, an equiper, a guide, to show them as much love as possible. Also to nurture and love your wife in front of them. If you're not showing affection, at least, hugging your wife or maybe even kissing your wife in front of your boys, they may say, oh, y'all, whatever. But at the end of the day, they need to see that you love each other.
Yeah. Dude, me and my wife's goal is to gross out our children at least once a day. So awesome. My 6-year-old, man, if the kid had tomatoes, he'd throw it at us. Like, he's like, oh, that's so gross. We're like, we know. Yeah. Take that.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
And I purposely always compliment my wife out loud in front of my kids, and my the 12 and 14 are like, they say that all the time. I was like, hey, mom's hot. She's hot. Look at her. She's beautiful. And I used to say it all the time. Here, I'll tell you this one quick funny story. My wife, I've known her for 24 years. We've been married for 17 years. And, my kids have hardly ever seen us argue. Like they've never, we've got rules. Like, you don't yell, you don't scream, you don't call each other names. There's always a line of respect. This was like last summer, we were sitting down on our deck. My wife and I were having a bit of a heated discussion, but even though it was heated, we were talking, I was talking to her with the same voice tone I'm talking to you, and back to her, to me as well. And my 14-year-old comes up to us and he's like, what are you guys talking about? And I was like, well, we're in the middle of a disagreement right now. He's like, what? You're fighting? And I was like, no. I was like, we're disagreeing. He's like, are you going to get divorced? And I'm like, what? He's like, well, I've never seen you argue. And I'm like, and I was like, hey, sit down, take a seat. I was like, I want you to see how adults work things out. And I was like, and I think this would be a great lesson for you. So what you're going to do is you're going to watch me and mom hash this out. And you'll notice a few certain things. And at the end of this, I'm going to ask you what you saw. And he said the same thing. He's like, you guys didn't yell. No one called each other names. No one stormed off. I'm like, well, those are the rules. So talk nice to your brother, will you?
That's awesome, man. That's a great boundary to have, man. I know that, I started getting convicted here lately, man, of what are you imparting to your kids? Not only that, like skill set wise for me, I'm trying to teach them everything. It's like, dude, you need to learn as much of this junk as you're at home while you're at home so that you don't have to go out in the world and be forced to learn it or just not know it, But one of them I got convicted about was teaching them to be dangerous as men. Dangerous, but being able to keep it all together and hold it, yeah, you can be dangerous, but a true man holds it all together, unless he has to protect his family in some way, shape or form, but yeah, I know that's a cool boundary for you guys to have. I know that the fights at my house growing up were just outrageous. People kicking doors in. I mean, just crazy. And so we we'll have our heated discussions, like we call it bathroom sessions. We have a big bathroom, so we'll sit and we'll talk about it in the bathroom. But sometimes there's some arguments at the end. There are arguments that are healthy arguments, right? Like, hey, no, you did this and I didn't really like it and it made me feel this way. Or, because I kind of adopted the thing is Cheryl Richardson. I don't know if you've ever heard of this quote, but she says, if you avoid conflict to keep peace, you start a war inside yourself. And so, So with that, we just took and we started saying, you know what, I want to be more honest with you. If you say something that kind of hits me the wrong way, I'm going to give you a grading at the front of it. Like, hey, I don't want to upset you or anything, but I want to just tell you something that happened earlier that I didn't really like. And I'm sitting here just toiling about it. Can we have a conversation about it? Absolutely. My wife's got tough skin, man. She's a bull, dude. So she just was like, all right, yeah, let's have a conversation about it, And so, versus running, which is what I did, when I was a kid, And so, yeah, my buddy Tommy, man, he read me through an exercise. He said your emotions and your, I would say, yeah, your emotions are where it got you where you are today. Because I was struggling with conflict resolution and having a tough confrontational conversation with people. I'm a boss, I got to have those conversations. And he was just saying those thoughts and feelings and actions got you where you are today. He goes, you need to thank them for getting where you are and then say, I no longer need you. And either write them down on a piece of paper and burn them, or what I did is I went to a river and let them wash away, and so such a cool exercise, and I included that in my book too. But yeah, I think it's a really cool scenario. And man, it's helped me a lot. That one exercise.
I want to ask you about having patience while in the waiting room. So I want to get to that in a second. Sure. But I want to commend you on something. And it's just an observation. You not harboring grudges, do you think that helps with your stress level and while you think about that? And I think I already know the answer to it, but the thing that I want to add, you come across to me as a very comforting, laid back, just sort of soothing dude. That's why I felt like I could really just open up to you about what I did. Mm-hmm. And normally I'm just behind this mic, a monkey on the mic, just asking questions. Right.
Yeah.
But, you come across to me as a man who's very full, but can also you welcome other people confiding in you or talking to you. You just have that comforting way about you. Do you think the fact that you do not harbor grudges or anything like that's part of why you're so open and maybe why you're so welcoming to others?
I'd say so. I mean, to hold on to a grudge like that takes up so much emotional and mental energy. Oh my gosh, it's so draining. I'm gonna be honest. I'm a business owner. I got 15 things going on. I got 20 people to work for me. I don't have time for all that mess. And so part of my thing daily is all right, who's ticked me off a little bit today? Do I need to have those conversations? Let's still have a conversation with them, or I'm gonna have an internal conversation with myself and just all right, cool. I'm gonna forgive these people. I'm gonna have this conversation with them and see why they did this. And that's what gives me my sanity, because like I said, I mean, holding bitterness and anger and grudges against people, man, it takes up so much emotional and mental energy. I have so much in my head already that it keeps me at peace. And I like to be one of those guys that people can confide in and have tough conversations with if they need somebody in their life like that, because not a lot of people do have people like that. And I'm a empathetic kind of guy, man. Like, hey, let me jump down into what you're talking about, and be down there with you for a minute.
So I imagine your boys probably find it pretty easy to open up to you. Do you find that?
My oldest struggles a lot. My oldest struggles a lot with it for some reason. I think. Can I tell you a small story about that?
Yeah, please.
So he just turned 14 in.
What day?
January 8th. He turned 14. My youngest just turned 7, like the 16th. So it was recent. But my oldest, he's 14, and he has this. He's very, very. He's always been like a tender-hearted kid, and so I got him a Bible and a journal. And in the front of that journal, I wrote him a 2-page letter, and I wrote him this just heartfelt, like sometimes life is going to be tough, but you got to be able to push through the adversity. And I wrote him this letter, and at the end of it, I said, I believe in you. You have to believe in you, and you have what it takes, and you're enough. Man, when he got up from reading it, he sat there and read it in front of his mom and his brother and everything. And when he got up and read it, he just started crying and gave me a big old hug and said, Dad, I love you. Man, on all the days that I feel like I'm going to screw up as a parent and all the things I've ever done, for him to come up and just say that after I wrote that letter to him, man, was just like, I finally hit the dad, like, oh, I had a win, but he struggles a lot more for some reason coming to me about stuff. Again, maybe it's because I'm dead, and maybe he thinks I'll be ashamed of him or something, but it's kind of weird. But like when we're in the car together, I drive him to youth group, and on Wednesday nights when they have youth group because of quarantine. But when I would drive him, those created the coolest conversations, because he'd be like, hey, Dad, how do you ask a girl how old she is? So I'm like, well, you don't ask her by herself, for one. Get her around some people, and then ask her what grade she is. You can kind of figure out what age she's in. So without directly asking, but and it's those cool conversations. Like another time he asked me, he's like, Dad, how do you know that a girl's the one? Which is a deep question. You're just like, crap, I don't want to fail this question, and you don't want to avoid it, he.
How'd you answer that?
Oh my gosh, man!
You really got me interested in that answer, man.
I told him. I said I avoided it till the next night. Because they're one's 14, one's 7. I still go up there and pray with them every night. And one time in my life, I felt that was such a chore. But dude, I pray. I get to go do this. I get to go pray with my kids. And so, I went up there and I told him. I was like, I was like, I'm going to be honest. God straight up told me, like I told you, I was like, when she walked through the door, God said, there she is. And I was like, heck yeah, I was in a bad situation, finna get into trouble. And I was like, God, you got to show me who I'm going to be with, because I'm fixing to jack myself up. And and she walked through the door and said, there she is. And I was like, all right, cool. That's all I need to know. Sweet. Let's roll with it. 2 years later, we were married. So, but yeah, I just think that I definitely told him, I was like, you'll have a peace, man. And knowing that she builds you up and makes you a better person, and, yeah, I mean, somebody that builds you up, believes in what you're doing, and just makes you a better person, and then God's going to tell you for sure.
I like that. I haven't gotten that question quite yet, but what I always tell them, I share with them certain aspects about their mom that I really appreciate. I'm like, Mom and I are best friends. Not only are we married, but she's my best friend. When I'm acting not in line with who I really am, she calls me on that. in a very respectful way, not in a demasculating way. And of course, I have to explain what demasculating means. Like, well, she doesn't call me names. She doesn't talk down to me. You know, she's looking out for me. The other thing too is that we enjoy the same things, and we like to connect. We like to have conversation. I've often told my boys this, and it's no dig on a woman who has to have makeup on at all times or anything like that. I was like, you know what I really like about your mom? I was like, she's the type of girl that doesn't have to have makeup on. She throws on some yoga pants, puts her hair in a ponytail, no makeup. She'll crush me in the gym by working me harder than I ever have, and trying to, you know, keeping up with me. I'm keeping up with her. And then she'll go grab a freaking huge lunch and a beer afterwards. And I was like, I love that about her. Like, she's just like, she is a what do I call her? Like a guy's gal. Like, she's not
with the guys. Yeah.
Yeah. She's not like, oh no, wait, I have to go tan. I have to go get my nails done. I need my weekly massage. Like, that is not her. Like, I like the fact that she's like, yeah, let's go do it. You know, like,
yeah. My wife won't have a beer, but she'll have a glass of wine or a stiff, you know, but a margarita. But yeah, she won't. She's not a beer drinker, but yeah, she'll do it. Man, she skeet shoots. Man, she fishes, dude.
There you go.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's awesome.
It is, man. Like, you kind of almost have to if you got boys. Like my wife, bless her heart, man. Last weekend, we played flag football as a family. Oh, and my wife, man, keeps up with these boys. Like, she can throw a spiral and everything. I'm like, that's what I like about your mom. Like, right. she just hangs in with us. You know, she's a martyr at this point, putting up with you people.
No
like
doubt.
Me. But hey, as we wrap up here, I really want you to talk about the waiting room, the patience in the waiting room. What is that all about?
Well, the waiting room is I think we've all been there. I'll tell you, you know, it's really hard to describe, you know, but like there's been times where I've been in the waiting room just like, God, help me get out of this place. You know, like, I've got to get out of here. Help me get out of here. And sometimes it's the best thing. We never know what's preparing us for what may lay ahead in the future. And I like to tell people that only God knows that, and He puts you in the waiting room for a reason. So, you know, I was in one rating when we moved to Nashville, Tennessee, bro. We stayed in a 1-bedroom extended stay hotel for 9 months, trying to buy a house. Yeah, I know, it's crazy. I should have got an apartment. I get it. Hindsight's 2020. So we were trying to buy a house. Man, we put 25 offers.
But you get free muffins every day, right?
Yeah,
and really terrible coffee for free.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, we were in that for 9 months trying to buy a house. We put 25 offers on 25 different houses. And then when we got to the point where we finally got one, got it on a contract, was going to close, I lost my job a week before closing. And like, throwing all that out the window was like so rough for me, because like we had tried so hard and we're so frustrated. And then we went and lived with 2 single guys, me, my wife, and my 3-year-old son, which one of those guys is still one of my best friends to this day. He's my photographer and graphic designer, and he does all our marketing. And, but still, you know, you're walking on eggshells. Like, man, dude, like I was in such a bad place. But then, I mean, the waiting room to me is sometimes it's preparing you for something you just don't know that you're going to encounter. I use an example of me being on tour, being in a van, the radiator started leaking. Well, 3 other times in my life, I've been on the side of the road with the same problem and frustrated, mad, cursing at the sky. Why is this happening to me? I'm changing a freaking water pump on a Jeep on the side of the road for the 3rd time, you know, and I get broken down in Birmingham, Alabama, of all places, like 4 hours away from where I'm at. I have to drive to Huntsville because we have a show the next day. And it's, I pull it in AutoZone. Everybody goes and gets a drink and sits in the cool air conditioner at Taco Bell. It's 100 degrees outside, and I changed the water pump all by myself in 4 hours in the parking lot. And all the guys were like, and they came back to me like, dude, how do you know how to do that? And I was like, and I had my tools, which was even funnier because I knew now to be prepared, right? So they were just like, they were so grateful. And at that moment, I became grateful for the 3 times that I've been stuck on the side of the road, you know, because God knew that one day 4 dudes, my wife, and a 6-year-old little boy, baby, were going to be needing me to know that skill. So for anybody that's in the waiting room, I know it sucks. Trust me. I know I've been there, and I've been there. Trust me. But sometimes we just never know what's preparing us for what we might be facing in the future.
I love that description, man. This was I got to tell you, this was by far, I think, one of my most favorite unexpected interviews, because until today, I didn't exactly know who Derek Stone was, but I'm honored that I got to meet him and hear his story. This was just super, super cool.
Yeah.
So your book is out now. I want to make sure everybody can find it. Is it just on Amazon? Is it on all platforms?
It'll be on Amazon first, I'm sure. You can find it at derekstone.online, which will be DEREKSTONE.online. Amazon link will be there. And yeah, that's where you find it at. It'll be anywhere else that I know to put it. I will put it once I find out where I need to put it. I don't have a publisher yet. I'm self-publishing it. So I really just want to get the word out. And my passion in life, like I said earlier, is to empower people to change their own situation. And for me, the most impactful thing that I've ever been through in my life was forgiving my dad, and how I've came out on the other side of that, and how it's got me to where I am today. Because all those, like I said, it's a butterfly effect of chain reaction. And, I just want to help people walk through that, what that means, because so many people know they should forgive. They just don't know the how. And I want to walk them through the how.
Well, this was really good. I think pretty much everybody who has 2 feet and living on this planet probably needs to exercise some forgiveness or have some guidance on how to do so. So thank you for creating that resource, and thank you for writing your book and giving your gift to the world. So
yeah,
honored to meet you. Honored to know you. So, gentlemen, we're going to, not to worry, we'll have all the links in the show notes for Derek. We'll have, if you want to follow him on social media, if you want to grab a copy of his book, all kinds of good stuff. Don't worry about it. We'll have all the links in the show notes. Just go to gooddadproject.com/271 for this show. Again, gooddadproject.com/271. Derek, thank you for giving us some guidance on how to live legendary, my friend.
Thank you, Larry. I appreciate you having me.
You bet. All right, gentlemen, that's all we got for you today. Go out, live with purpose, live legendary, because legacy is forever. Take care.